Good morning, afternoon, and evening. My name is Stefan Bartle, and this is the Economic Podcast for Gen Z. Welcome, everyone, to another episode and another week. I am very excited to talk about South American politics, and not only am I doing this alone, but I'm accompanied today with Diana Luna from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. Diana, I want to thank you very much for coming on. If you could please introduce yourself and your organization to the audience, I really look forward to this conversation today.
Thank you, Stefan, and have a good day to everyone. My name is Diana Luna. I work for the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, which I've been working for a couple of years, more than 10 years, and the last 7 years I've been working, especially on matters on Latin America. And what the Friedrich Naumann Foundation does is promote liberalism. Uh, we are a German foundation, so I will put it in the European sense, but I would say for our audience that is hearing us, we promote in Germany and in over 50 countries worldwide values such as free market, democracy, open societies, and also human rights with many accents nowadays with artificial intelligence, with geopolitical because the world has changed a lot, and we have we have two offices in Latin America and one office in DC, and we nowadays I work on the Americas, so we have in DC, in Mexico, and in Argentina. So I'm very happy to be here.
Perfect. Well, we'll leave the Yankees out of this conversation for now.
Yeah.
But ranging from Mexico to Argentina, LATAM is seeing truly changes in the geopolitical sphere. What currently is receiving the most of your attention in this space?
I think right now, one of the things that looking with more attention is the changes that are happening, especially this year, the super election year, with the 12 or 15 elections being won by, let's call it, right governments. And I'm very looking forward to see what are they which programs they are gonna implement. I think also it's very important for me to see, how the region sees the influence of China, especially regarding the raw materials, and of course, one of my favorite issues is also what the doctrine don't know, what the influence of the U.S. In the region is causing. Especially, I look this from a, let's say, European perspective because this region, as I work for a German foundation, this region hasn't been in the center of Europe. So, of course, I'm always looking about the transatlantic issues and how Europe could get more involved as a partner in the region.
I definitely share your sentiment there that Latin America has been on the back burner for many policy decisions, and only most recently, I may be speaking out of term here, but recently, since Milei won his election, has Latin America really popped up on the map? And then for me last year, the audience may not know, I was myself in Argentina where I was able to see the midterm elections unfold and really see a Milei effect. Perhaps we can begin with him and then kind of move up
Sure.
Cono Sur. Um, who is Milei? Why is he important? Why did he make everyone's head turn about 4 years ago, 3 years ago? What's going on in Argentina, better said?
Yeah, I've been looking what is happening in Argentina for let's say over 10 years. So I wasn't surprised at all when Milei won the elections. Javier Milei is a president who has promised to change completely the economic system, completely also let's say the clientelism system, who has been in Argentina, let's say infect the country. Javier Milei is someone who is really an outsider. Nowadays, we see many people that call anti-establishment, but they aren't. And he was indeed one. He didn't have a party structure. He was, economic expert, let's say, like you, wearing wearing a leather jacket, loving rock, loving controversial debates, and he had an idea. He really had the idea to shock the system, to reduce at least seven ministries in Argentina, seven like to reduce the weight of the state in Argentina, and also to fight the corruption. And of course, it's been already it's 2023. He was elected as a president, and you were maybe we were at that time in Argentina, and you could see it surprised me the most is exactly this GNC was the one who voted Milei. Most of the time, the young generations were very close to the leftists, the Kirchneristas, and now they realize my future depends on what's happening in the country. And either something changes in Argentina or I leave. Most of them leave to Europe because they have a passport, an European passport from a German, Spanish, or Italian family. So, of course, what's happening the last 2 years, it's over almost 3 years, has been very interesting because he needed to learn that even if he wants to be anti-establishment, he needs governance. He needs to work with other parties. Let's say the party of Macri, the conservatives. Himself is a libertarian, but also he realizes that he cannot do, he needs the state, he needs an efficient state. And I think this is what it impressed me the most that it took a while to realize that he needed to have he cannot take all decisions on his own. He needs states, and he has really do a shock therapy on inflation. I don't know when you were living there, you can also share how the inflation was over 200%, and nowadays inflation has increased a lot. But still, there's so many things to change that I'm not sure how a normal Argentinian, how much they feel that there is a difference because still life is very expensive in Argentina. But I think the changes are more than necessary, but we don't see right now like that a consumption power that we wish to have. So this will be my first impressions on Milei.
For me, since 2023, looking at the geopolitical situation for LATAM, it's almost as if a domino effect has occurred because we have seen 2 3 weeks ago Colombia had elections and they just elected their a right-wing conservative government. Last year, President Cast in Chile has become elected. I believe maybe Peru, Bolivia also held elections.
Yeah.
We've really seen since in from El Salvador, Bukele and Milei, they've kind of almost colored in the map between the two countries. A swing of right-wing governments. Can you speak to maybe, is there something synonymous going on there? Is it a lot of what Milei effect has been to just take a chainsaw to the government and to reduce it? Is it primarily to support the economy like what Bukele is doing by introducing cryptocurrency as an official currency? Or I believe Cast ran successfully on immigration policies. Is there a single thread to kind of tie these string of successes through?
I would say yes. I would say that I mean there are one different tendencies that I will like to point out. First one is, of course, we always see that in the region this incumbent effect. Like once a government is elected, the next one mostly is the population decided to vote against them. So this is one of the effects that we see in Latin America. But still, this is a tendency that hasn't been as strong as we have seen it. And I will say the three issues that have that generally in Latin America that the population have felt that the former governments haven't accomplished important results. And first of all, on security. Second of all, economic situation. And third, migration. And I will put it first of all, well, it depends on the country we're talking about. I would say in Argentina, the economic situation, the inflation was stronger than security. In Colombia, maybe that security was stronger. I would say in Chile was a mix between security and migration. And we could talk about that, but the thing is that I would say that the leftist governments promise one of the things that they haven't accomplished, and one of them is also fighting corruption. And I would say the scandals of Petro on corruption of the Kirchner. I mean, it was for the Argentinians, former Ministry of Economics. He was the one who was competing against Milei. And of course, people said, we're not gonna vote for you. We know what we get from you. So I will say this is one of the reasons that this corruption scandals, but I'll need to be also honest, this is not like the first corruption scandals that we have in Latin America. We have been having that for a while. But I think also that the society has changed. Like the last index of Latino Barometro has pointed that if you want to put it in this way, societies in Latin America are returning back to certain conservative values, which wasn't the case. And this is a very interesting index because it gives you that the results that they got from last year are the same one that they got 2002 and two. So we have seen that people are coming back. I think also it's part of the disappointment that many thought that, a lot of leftist governments really promise like more equality and but more subsidies, and they realize they don't have the funding to do this. So I will put like a third trend to this is the huge let's say the lack of the commodity boom or the commodity bonanza that we used to have when Lula was elected for the first time. At the same time, in all the region, we could see that, of course, Chavez and Bachelet and so on, they had a model with the commodity prices, coffee, oil, call it mineral resources were pretty high, and they were just exporting to China mostly. And this gave these governments like the funding to, provide all kinds of social programs. And about the efficiency, there are questions about it. I guess some of them did make a change, but not they were not sustainable at all. So now people know, okay, we cannot keep living this way. And I think in that sense, the Argentinian model, I would say more than Malay, I will give more credit to the society because they are the ones who, need to keep having a very strict budget and financing a family of four, and the rent is still very high. So, but they knew they needed to, those reforms were needed in order to change the economic system. And I do think that has a certain economic effect. And people, there's also, I would put like, just to finish this answer, a fourth trend, which will be that there is a crisis of political parties in Latin America. So the ones that people know, that was the case of Colombia, very clear that the candidate of the Uribismo, of the former president of Colombia, she didn't make it to the second term. She got less than 10%. And that was for many who knew that was for many who know the political system or for the society in general a shock. And that was because people want something new and a short and want fast answers to the problems that they are facing.
I guess to recall Margaret Thatcher's words, socialism works until you run out of someone else's money. Paraphrasing there, but more or less. And thinking about it now, Javier Milei is an economist and also has a great hairstyle, much like myself. To maybe bring in, because you had mentioned in your response there, China. There is, I think, a new maybe race for natural resources in Latin America between China and the USA. I know the Chinese were very prominent or are very prominent in Peru. I think they own a port, and I
Yeah.
think they also own one half of the Panama Canal, or they are operating it very strongly there. Can you perhaps elaborate on the natural resource tension going on here?
Yes, I think it's something not as new. It's just the fact that the let's say the last 20 years of the U.S. administrations have sort of neglect the importance of Latin America. And they always say that, but they really didn't mean it until now. And that was for China, also they having these ambitions on having different markets to export, but also to get raw minerals was pretty attractive. And it was 2013 when the Road Belt Initiative of China was launched, and a year after, Panama was already part of it. And even though it started very slowly on the political field, on the economic field, you have such a countries like Chile, where the first trade partner is China, and it was very attractive because for many countries they just some of them have better deals than others. It also depends a lot on the capacity of the government. That wasn't the same for Chile as for some countries in Central America. But at the end, they really create a dependency on the exports on raw materials, mineral, copper, especially in the case of Chile. But we have, we could talk generally about South America. I would say Mexico and is more the exception. But even there, the influence of China. And it's in many sense. And one is, of course, China needs raw materials, and the rare minerals are in Bolivia, in Argentina, and some parts of Brazil. So that's this attractiveness of the region. And for many of these governments was also were a very short-term vision. Yeah, we need funding. Let's sell this without thinking more about the knowledge transfer. Like, how can we stop being just sending a raw material, and how maybe can we, maybe add some value? I think Chile has learned some of this in a certain extent, but the big promise that China has made to Latin America was we do business with you and we don't care what you do. We don't care if you follow democracy. We don't care. We're not gonna set up conditions on how you govern, and that has been very attractive to many, yeah, many. I would call it even many regimes. We could see the influence of China in Venezuela. They keep giving loans to Chavez and then Maduro until they realize they will not pay back. And that was until, let's say, 4 years ago. So it was and then we could see also, I mean, there's not a correlation, but the influence of China somehow helped many authoritarian governments to stay more in the power. But at the same time, I will need to be, open, and I wouldn't like to blame China for everything. The countries needed to diversify their trade. So in that sense, I'm not against having other trade partners. The question is if there is an equal level of a relation, and at the same time is what I find it very critically, very, very, when I'm very skeptic about is when China buys critical infrastructure, like you mentioned in the case of Peru, one of the most important port in Peru is owned by China, and in Chile, China has also a strong influence on infrastructure projects. And just put it like this, then there is a strong dependency. It's not just about economics, it's just also a political dependency that this brings that. And of course, now the US says, okay, we cannot, in certain extents, we cannot forbid everyone to trade with China. They also trade with China. We just want them to be more careful, or well, that's in a very diplomatic way to put it, on critical infrastructure. And we see there what's happening in Panama Channel, where the US says like this is geopolitically of interest, and we don't, even though the channel is not owned by China, that's not the case, but the influence of China is there. So we'll see more of this pressure against countries to have more control, or at least to not let China control infrastructure, critical infrastructure as airports and ports.
It was a huge policy maneuver of the US in the 1900s and late 1800s to attain dual oceanic power and use the canal to maneuver between
Yeah.
the Atlantic Fleet and the Pacific Fleet. And Teddy Roosevelt famously said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." The US trade partners that it has also been shifting a lot lately. I remember one president, the current one, said they're going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it.
Yeah.
This, I mean, ridiculous as it is, and the South American countries have successfully created EU Mercosur between Europe and well, Mercosur, of course. And this agreement finally got through and ratified, I believe, too, which is also a great success. For me, the relationships between USA and Mexico, I know Scheinbaum is now the first female president of Mexico, and she's held more or less her own, I think, against Donald Trump, and tensions still arise and exist between the two. And I believe now Donald Trump desires to renegotiate the already negotiated NAFTA agreement, which is now USMCA. Do you have any details on how that agreement is supposed to go forward?
The information that I have is that, well, I think in this week we're gonna have more answers to that question. There is the second round of negotiations happening, but what we see is Donald Trump and his I'm not sure if his whole administration, I would just say Donald Trump really wants to keep this year of, the trade has it is set in a way that you can have yearly examinations of the treatment every year until 10 years. And it seems that this is what is happening, which brings a lot of uncertainty because it wouldn't change the way the trade has been until now, but it will give less certainty to the investments, to the enterprises to see, okay, this is what this the stand until a year, well, we don't know next year. And this the big loser of such an agreement where they don't want to change, but they will, stay with the stick and the carrot every year. It will be to Mexico. Mexico will be the big loser, especially because of this whole nearshoring. Many companies, especially European countries, have used, well, not just European, I will also say even Chinese companies have used Mexico to produce, have used Mexico as a country to produce manufacturing because it's cheaper and you have high quality work skillers, and then just export this. The best example of this is the automobile industry, which has been, has grown and has had such such a successful because of the North Free Trade Agreement, the USMCA now, let's say the North American Free Trade Region. And now, I get that the U.S. thinks that they have lose through this agreement. I would say certain sectors, but mostly looking at how the south part of the U.S. has developed, I wouldn't say many have strongly profit from. It's He thinks he needs to deliver something to part of his base, but also in his base we have some people who are more I have people who are very free trade and some who aren't more in the free trade on the region, the Reagan sense. So I really think that what also US wants to do is to keep to negotiate with Canada on one sense and with Mexico in that sense. And on a negotiation, yeah, strategy, this is awful. This is not good because it's with Canada and Mexico cool and they are trying to work more together, they could have a strong position for negotiating. So at the same time, I want to be still optimistic because even if that Mexico will be the big loser of yeah exam of having looking at the agreement every year, still the US will lose for this. And also, I think the disadvantages of this sort of yearly agreement will be that Mexico will feel very encouraged to let China have export more through Mexico because nowadays, they need to diversify. So I think this is the whole point of of the U.S. Foreign policy, which I think I can understand that they want national interest to be more clear, defended. But at the same time, you have partnerships which are so important, and you want to get close. That if you just keep having a coercive approach, you will let them very close to China.
I wrote an article a couple months back concerning how this isn't truly free trade, how this is all based on quotas, taking the EU Mercosur example in cans on how only certain quotas are allowed to get in and at this price and all of this and these prices are manipulated either in Brussels or in Montevideo down in Uruguay. And it's going to be the same thing concerning nearshoring between USCMCA prior NAFTA. And I think the end losers here will be consumers on all sides of the
Sure.
border. And
Sure.
I find that, NAFTA to me seemed like a really good deal, and everyone really, we know Americans had goods cheaper. And now not only do we not have goods cheaper, but a lot of businesses are now uncertain on where to place investment because most recently, in the last couple of days, the current administration has placed tariffs on Canada.
Yeah.
Um, all of last year, tariffs were the news on how wealthy it's going to be, and now the U.S. is handing money back to the companies that lost out on the tariffs, and the consumers are still in the minus. To kind of near the
Let me just say something on that because it's very important. I think part of the problem now with free trade is that it's not as free as we are speaking out. Also because of the whole regulations, especially as you mentioned from Latin America. If you wanna export like let's say meat from Argentina, which is great. You've been there. I mean, I love it. I love it's one of my favorite meats. You have to face so many regulations, and many of them, if we are honest, they are protectionist measures to just not let them be part of the market. And these non-trade barriers are really now the main discussion because I am very happy that we have the free trade agreement of the comprehensive agreement between Mercosur and Europe. But honestly, I also say this is not a game changer because China doesn't have an agreement and they are trading more than Europe. So I think those agreements are good, but also we need to get rid of these non-trade barriers.
in the closing segment here, I kind of wanted to ask, we've mentioned the Don Road Doctrine, we've seen how the US is reprioritizing its backyard and how this isn't uncommon. The US policies have done this previously. How do you see the Western Hemisphere moving forward? Do you see any large players coming and leaving? Do you kind of still think it's going to be this perhaps tension between Brazil and the USA? How, if you were to look 10 years into the future, how would you say Western Hemisphere relations will be?
Wow, I think in 10 years the Western Hemisphere influence will see still a great influence on China. I think but I would hope at least that it will be more that the countries will realize more about the dangers of giving up our industry to China. It's not the same to have a local company's own water sources than just give that to China. And I know it's hard, but I think there is this conscience more about how China works with the region, the whole loans that they have given to countries like Ecuador, where the U.S. needed to just help them somehow to manage their loans because they were it was a lot what they were really the debts that they have with China. I think in the short term, we're gonna see in the Western Hemisphere nowadays, especially when we have many countries who are, I will call it pro-US or they want to be allies. Many in the region, I think in the short term we will see a close cooperation in security, in migration also. I think the fact that there is a threat there, and the threat of the U.S. administration nowadays is real. We see that in Venezuela. So people know this threat is real. We're gonna see, and we're seeing that countries, for instance, Mexico, they are working closely on security when they are just sending drug traffickers, drug bosses and there is this because there is a threat, and I will see like in the next maybe 3 to 4 years, we're gonna see the priorities of the U.S. foreign policy more like yeah real. at the same time, I think that we're still gonna people the South America will still need China, and might be that with the UN, we're going to see more that the countries will vote more in favor of US. This could be also in things that are important for the administration, like the Israel voting. Um, and then I hope, living in Europe, I hope that the Europeans will also realize how important this region is and want to keep this partnership or to deepen the partnership. So honestly, I think this is going to be intense moments because governments uh, we need to deliver fast results, but at the same time, I think that on the long term, I would then give like a suggestion, a humble suggestion, like a partnership you cannot build just by always wanting to have your results. You want so a partnership is built also when you know what is important to the other part. And in that sense, uh, the regions need a lot help on providing a better life to their citizens. So I think questions like trading more with the regions without less protectionism are ways to open the channels also for prosperity, not in the US and Canada, but let's call it the prosperity on the Americas.
That is probably one of the best ways we can end an episode today. Diana, thank you so much for joining us on the Economic Podcast for Gen Z. Where can people find you, come in touch with you and your foundation?
Well, I will recommend you guys look at the Instagram of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. I also have my LinkedIn and X. Yeah, look at Diana Luna, Berlin. You will find me there, and I will love to stay in contact with you. And Stefan, I love being with you, and I feel younger after this episode.
Well, we'll make sure to have you back on the next time an election occurs or something else in the Donroe Doctrine happens. To the audience, I'd like to say thank you for joining us today. Please write us at the Economic Podcast for Gen Z at gmail.com. We are also active on social media and available on streaming services. Diana, once again, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Stefan.